Can the stock market keep soaring while the economy slows to a crawl? Roger Altman, founder of Evercore ISI, dissects the paradox of a slowing U.S. economy and a stock market that just won't quit. Find out what Altman thinks could tip the scales, and why the next big move in the market might catch everyone off guard.
0.9%. So quite a change in the 2025 outlook. And you see some weakness in private sector job growth. You see interest rates a little lower than you would expect in a strong economy. You see oil prices weaker. You have that backdrop. At another level, stocks want to go up. You have the AI revolution. You have inflation moderating. You have Trump on a roll, and so forth. And the $64 billion question is, which of these two frameworks is going to prevail? Now, on tariffs themselves, I just think there's a basic reality about tariffs. Your previous guest was talking about who pays them. In the long run, consumers pay them. I think there's just overwhelming evidence to that effect. Yes, short run, you could have some of the retailers or some of the retailers, for example, swallowing part of them, but in the medium and long run, consumers pay them. They raise prices, therefore they reduce consumption, therefore they reduce production, therefore they reduce growth. That is what tariffs do. And it looks as though, although there's so much noise around all this, that when all the dust settles, we're going to end up with about a 15 to 20% weighted average tariff, which is up from 3% when President Trump took office. That is not a positive for growth. It's just basic.
So to use your term, why do you think the market then wants to run up?
Well, you have an important segment of investors who are huge believers in the AI revolution, and that it's going to be the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution. They may be right, and they see that as enormously bullish for productivity and really transformational, and that it transcends the short-term questions of tariffs or other matters. There's that point of view. And then there are those who think that the tariffs just aren't going to be that consequential. Even if they are at 15 to 20%, they're going to reduce economic results very modestly, and they're not going to end up being a big factor. I don't happen to agree with that, but that's another view. And then there's just a lot of bullishness around, including that the president, and I have to give him credit, has had a series of recent successes. The NATO defense budget commitments, the Iran conflict. Obviously, he just passed his most important legislative priority, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and so forth. So there are just two strong points of view here, different colliding points of view, and it'll take a while to see which one prevails, at least in terms of equities.
And a lot of it does come down to the big variable of growth. I know you've been studying the impact of the recent tax and spending plan on the U.S. deficit. We have a big project that came out today looking at what it all means, what the consequences are of a deficit that ultimately gets out of control. And we'll discuss that more in detail later in the show. But I'm just curious, from your perspective, what do you think the likelihood is, as the White House has been saying, that GDP will essentially solve any deficit issues we have, that by extending the 2017 tax cuts and spurring growth, that, you know, the debt picture will basically be non-existent?
I don't think that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will have any impact on growth in terms of improving it. We're already at full employment, so there's not a lot of inherent upside from the point of view of short-term, medium-term, and economic growth. And overall, the fiscal impacts of the bill are dreadful, and that's probably an understatement. I mean, look at it. We have, in round numbers, a $2 trillion current fiscal deficit. And we have that at a time of overall solid U.S. economic conditions. This bill expands the deficit by about 50% over the medium term. That is not good. It also adds $3.5 trillion to the national debt over 10 years. That is not good. And at some point, and I'm not nearly smart enough to know when, there's going to be a reckoning over all this. Maybe it occurs during President Trump's term, maybe it doesn't. But I don't see this bill improving growth, and I don't think most economists see that. Most economic forecasts around the bill do not incorporate meaningfully higher growth. And by the way, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 added very little to growth. And this is modeled after that, although it's a bigger bill. So I don't see the argument that this is going to that growth is going to skyrocket on account of this bill, and therefore our fiscal problems will be solved. I think it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, the market in its sort of short-sighted version is saying, okay, well, at least there's no fiscal payback that we're going to have to deal with initially. We're still running 6+% of GDP deficits, Roger. The deregulation piece, I think, always makes sense to try and focus in on in terms of what it could mean. It seems this catch-all, this kind of general kind of fairy dust you sprinkle across the economy, and businesses feel better. They have less to worry about in terms of compliance and regulation, things like that. How do you think it manifests itself in the real economy?
I think there have been periods when deregulation did improve economic performance. I'm just not sure whether that's going to be the case now. For example, there's so much talk about energy deregulation. But the U.S. is already the world's biggest oil and gas producer. And it's a little hard for me to see how we can expand that much beyond the pre-existing growth trajectory as a result of deregulation, but maybe I'm wrong. So it's hard to tell. I would doubt that this is going to be a big contributor to economic performance, but I'd like to be wrong on that. Maybe it will be.
Yeah, some big unanswerables at the moment, Roger, that's for sure, in these early days of as Congress now gets to work trying to codify some of this stuff. We'll talk soon, I hope. Roger Altman, thanks so much.